She laughed when I bought that shack for $5, like full body, can't catch her breath laughed, and told half the neighborhood I'd finally lost my mind. Now she's the one explaining herself to a judge, and I'm the one sitting on my dock, watching the sun come up over water that's still mine. Funny how things turn out when you try to bully a man who builds things for a living. My name's Ethan Rayner, and 12 years ago, I bought what Karen Holloway liked to call Rayner's Trash Palace, a collapsing lake shack that even raccoons treated like a bad Airbnb. The roof sagged so low you had to duck in the kitchen. The windows rattled if a squirrel sneezed, and the deck leaned toward the lake like it was tired of pretending it wasn't about to give up. But my father had fished off that busted deck when he was a teenager. And when he was dying, thin hands, hospital light too bright, he squeezed mine and said, "If you ever get the chance, bring that place back. Some homes deserve a second chance, same as people. You don't forget words like that. You don't shrug them off." 2 months later, a widower handed me the deed for $5 and said he just wanted it off his conscience before it slid into the lake for good. Naomi, my wife, the practical one, reminded me gently that our savings were thin and neither of us had built more than a birdhouse. But promises carry weight, and I've always been the kind of man who fixes things slowly, quietly, one board at a time. 12 years. Cedar beams cut by hand. Steel brackets bolted in by flashlight. Splinters, sunburns, learning the rhythm of the water. Naomi became the architect, the budget hawk, the voice that said, "We don't have to finish it all today." By the time we were done, that shack wasn't a shack anymore. It was a $5 million lakefront home made of sweat, patience, and grief turned into lumber. Karen didn't laugh anymore. The morning she showed up with 3 HOA compliance officers and a truck full of surveying gear, she didn't knock. Boots on my gravel, orange stakes stabbing into my shoreline like she was planting flags on conquered land. "Mr. Rayner," she said, smug as a weather report, "your dock is being reclassified as community property. Preliminary mapping shows your home sits on misallocated land." Community property. Like she was claiming my father's memory as shared parking space. Her officers spread out measuring my dock, photographing the deck, sticking poles into my yard. Naomi stepped out, took the stack of papers Karen handed her, and started flipping through them. Calm, focused. "Article 5B doesn't exist," she said lightly. "And this enforcement clause is about pool maintenance, not land boundaries." Karen's smile twitched. They left with a 72-hour deadline. And the next morning the pink slip started. Window glare violation. Wind chimes inconsistent with community harmony. Unauthorized bird seed type. Improper shoreline stone arrangement. It would have been funny if it wasn't so consistent. Naomi grabbed a binder and wrote on the front in thick black marker, "The Book of Nonsense Violations." Every pink slip went inside, cataloged with dates and dry commentary. Apparently rocks require formal permission to exist. But it wasn't random. Karen was building a paper mountain. And then she filed the lien. $93,000 for shoreline erosion caused by unauthorized construction. The bank called. Credit line frozen. Technical default. 30 days to foreclosure. I sat on the dock step with my phone in my hand and felt 12 years of work tilt sideways. That night the storm rolled in, sky bruised steel, rain slamming the roof, and the power cut out. Scout, our dog, growled low and steady toward the boathouse. I grabbed a heavy flashlight and a breaker bar and walked into the rain. 2 men were prying at the door. One said, "Grab the samples and let's go." Samples. They weren't vandals. They were setting up evidence. I stepped close enough to smell the wet earth and flipped the light on. Step away from my boathouse. The big one lunged, slipped on the soaked planks, went straight into the lake with a splash so perfect it almost felt scripted. The other ran. By the time the sheriff arrived, soaked and irritated, he shrugged and called it a civil dispute. Civil. When strangers break into your property in a storm to manufacture a lie. 2 days later, Naomi looked up from a stack of documents and said something that changed everything. "Do you remember your father's old box?" "From the shack. We dug it out of the attic, cracked leather, rusted corners, and inside were rolled papers we'd never opened. One unrolled into a 1903 state hydrographic survey map. The original shoreline, 20 feet farther out than the modern one. Historic water boundary precedents. Our deed referenced it. Karen had built her entire case on the modern shoreline. But legally, historically, the original shoreline governed our property. The land the lake had given back over decades, ours. The dock, ours. Her entire claim, void. Fear shifted into strategy. We installed hidden solar cameras the size of deck cards. One in driftwood, one under the dock angled up at feet, an underwater sensor at the base of the beams, cloud backups, encrypted uploads, Naomi stitched armor with keystrokes. And then we painted the boathouse neon teal. Not tasteful teal, offensively bright, glow in the dark even when it's cloudy teal. The kind of color that would personally insult Karen's beige soul. 3 nights later, motion alert. 3 HOA contractors walked straight toward the teal like moths to a flame. Dawn came sharp and early. A truck rolled up with an emergency safety order. Chainsaw, hydraulic cutter. One man in the water with goggles and a hacksaw. They were going to cut my dock from above and below at the same time. Naomi launched the drone. It rose with a low electric hum, hovering over them, red recording light steady. "Thermal is on," she said calmly. The contractors froze. "That's not HOA protocol," one muttered. The underwater sensor pinged. I called 911. Active attempt to destroy private property. Live footage. When the sirens got close, the men cracked. "They said this was permitted," one shouted. HOA approved. In the supervisor's glove compartment was a folder labeled with Karen's full name. Printed emails instructing them to expedite removal before homeowner interference. "This isn't civil anymore," the deputy said. It wasn't. The community meeting that followed felt like a courtroom with folding chairs. I plugged in Naomi's USB. Drone footage filled the screen, cutter clamped to my beam, man climbing out of the water. Gasps. Naomi showed erosion reports copied from a lake 2 counties away. Same wording, same photos. Proxy votes with forged signatures. Emails with Karen's instructions. A woman stood up shaking. "That's my name. I never signed this." A board member resigned on the spot. Karen pointed at me and called me selfish, arrogant. Naomi said quietly, "Or maybe you built an empire on lies." The room turned. People who'd whispered for years finally shouted. The board stepped away from her table like it was sinking. Court came months later. Judge Whitmore, sharp eyes, steady voice. She held up the 1903 map in a clear sleeve. "The HOA's claim is factually, legally, and historically incorrect. The lien was declared fraudulent. All fines void. The board removed. The HOA fined." Karen referred to the district attorney for fraud and conspiracy. The gavel struck once. Just like that, 12 years of promise stayed intact. Summer came back slow but steady. The court-appointed receiver ran things quietly. New neighbors ran for the board. Real neighbors. Porch doors turned sunflower yellow. Wind chimes sang louder than the old tranquility limit. The Millers put out pink flamingos just because they could. We replanted wildflowers along the shoreline. Purple cones, bright red lilies. Naomi said they looked like defiance. The 1903 map hangs framed inside the boathouse now. Every time I look at it, I think about my father, about how something drawn a century ago saved our home in the present. Here's the thing I learned, and it took getting pushed to the edge to see it clearly. Power doesn't always wear a uniform or carry a badge. Sometimes it wears beige and hands you pink slips. Sometimes it hides behind paperwork and words like compliance and community. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake intimidation for authority. But truth has weight, and patience has teeth. Karen thought she was fighting 2 quiet people. She didn't realize she was waking up an entire neighborhood. She mistook silence for weakness. Now, most evenings, Naomi and I sit on the dock with Scout stretched between us. The water taps gently against the beams that are still solid. The neon teal boat house glows a little obnoxiously in the sunset, and I love it more than ever. No boots in the gravel. No pink slips on the door. No chainsaws at dawn. Just the lake. Just the promise kept. So here's the question I can't shake. When someone abuses a little bit of power to control everyone else, how long do we stay quiet before it becomes our fault too? Was I wrong to fight back as hard as I did? Or is it the only language bullies ever understand? I'd really like to hear what you think. Have you ever dealt with an HOA, a boss, or anyone who used rules as a weapon? Did you push back? Or did you walk away? Tell me where you draw the line between keeping the peace and keeping what's yours.